Hello, I am Nick Bonanno. I am the senior official and the producer of wrestling operations for the United Wrestling Network, welcoming you to a live recording of the United Wrestling Podcast. My guests tonight are a collection of wonderful people based in the Bay Area who all contribute to Championship Wrestling, presented by West Coast Pro Wrestling, which is one of our affiliate shows that helps expand the United Wrestling Network to the local television markets, which is really the core of the program itself. So first, our main correspondent for Championship Wrestling is Bimbo Jimbo, James Kincaid. How you doing?
What's going on? Thanks for having me.
Great to see you. I see you're in your new setup for the Casa de Bimbo.
Yeah, a little bit. It's a work in progress still.
Little by little, it's looking good.
Thank you.
Next, of course, has been a little bit absent from the wraparounds of the program lately, but has been featured heavily on the show itself. Is timeless Levi Shapiro. Levi, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Nick. Thanks for having me. I have been a little bit out of place at the time, but trying to keep myself sane for the return.
Very good. You're going to need it, man. So, and of course, the man who, without him, we wouldn't be here at all. That is from West Coast Pro Wrestling, Scott Bregante.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you for letting me get on.
Yeah, of course. Really happy that you're here. Scott, I'm going to start off with you because before we could even get the program going, we would have needed the sponsor of West Coast Pro Wrestling. How did that company get going? How did your involvement in that expand?
I was a big fan of pro wrestling, especially Bay Area pro wrestling, and had a few friends that were in the business itself. And after a lot of talking, I said, "This is what I'm going to try to get something going, put on some great shows, and the rest is history." So we're here now.
Amazing. How long have you guys been going?
Since October of 2018, so we're fairly new.
Yeah, still, there. I feel like there might be a couple promotions, or maybe a lot of promotions in the Bay Area. Or am I making that up?
Yeah, no, we have a good handful of solid companies out here in the Bay Area. The Bay Area is definitely active.
Excellent. Yeah,
definitely.
So, of course, the rich history of that whole territory, even go back into the days a little bit. Levi, how long have you been, I guess, involved in the wrestling scene up in that part of California?
Well, actually, I think it was my 10-year anniversary last August. So we're coming up on my 11th any day now, which is quite shocking to me because I've always considered myself the young kid around the territory. But as I look back at it, I've seen a few now too, not just one generation or two maybe, but 2 or 3 generations kind of come up under me and made me really kind of take in where I've been with the territory and what I've seen it flourish into. Because kind of to touch back on what you were saying was like Northern California had a rich history, but it's still sometimes only a few independent promotions, and it was still a big territory, but now there's a lot more, and definitely a few kind of concentrated in certain areas rather than so spread out. But it's really it's a nice scene that I feel it's starting to get a little push behind it. And hopefully this show can help push it into the further.
Yeah, I absolutely hope that is an effect of the program itself. You mentioned before that congratulations on almost 11 years here. That's quite a time to stick around. And I would say you said that you often felt like the young kid. You've been able to turn back the clock, I'd say, in the last year and a half, 2 years. But for a while, I felt like people might have thought that you were the old guy in the locker room.
Definitely,
like deceivingly old. Maybe they say an old soul, or just kind of a different vibe than a lot of the people I've run into in California.
Oh yeah, definitely. An old soul is definitely what I've been. And it kind of comes out with the character and with the work, The thing that really got me so excited for wrestling was just the rich history of it all. And the more and more I researched, the more and more I did wrestling, it was the history that kept me going for a lot of it. So I've always something that really stuck with me. One time I had a tag match with Mustafa Saeed. He was another guy that's from around the Northern California territory. And I was like, I work old school, we're going to go and we can work classic, and none of it was old school. You know, it was all very on the fly, spotty kind of thinking. And he came back and he goes, "Oh, old school kid, you know, you should start watching stuff, anything before 1984." And that was like a click, because I grew up on, you know, Coliseum videos and stuff like that. So to really go back and learn a lot of that only adds to the fact that I had a beard when I was 15, you know, in middle school and stuff like that. So I've always been viewed as the older kid, but always at heart, the young one.
Well, bringing this all together, the broadcaster on our show tonight, Jimbo. Well, I guess what's your background in broadcasting, sports, and then how did that blend over into wrestling?
So I knew I wanted to get into sports broadcasting at a pretty early age, as athletic ability quickly said bye-bye to me, but I still wanted to stay involved somehow. So I knew pretty much, you know, maybe by freshman year of high school that I wanted to do something in sports broadcasting, and specifically wrestling as well was always a part of that sort of dream, because, you know, like Levi, I grew up loving wrestling, but specifically wrestling history in general. And I think that's why Levi and I mesh so well, is because we're this cool blend of old souls but being young at heart. Like, I grew up watching like AMC movies when they played commercial free, you know, old movies on AMC. So a lot of that sort of shaped my aesthetic and what I sort of like to sort of portray, this very classic kind of broadcaster persona. And so from there, you know, I went to San Francisco State University to get my degree in radio and television, and worked at KMBR 680, which is, you know, the sort of the ultimate sports radio station in the Bay Area. And from that, got hooked up with the Golden State Warriors back in 2014, and have been with them through 3 NBA championship seasons and 5 trips to the finals, and now this brave new world that we find ourselves in with the pandemic and everything like that. And, you know, through all that time, you know, going back to SF State is when I got tapped into what independent pro wrestling was really all about, because I wanted to cover it. So in the sports reporting class, it's like, hey, I found out about All Pro Wrestling. I saw this promotion in the Beyond the Mat documentary. So, you know, got hooked up with Roland. He said, yeah, come out, you can shoot and report on it and stuff like that. So that was sort of my in, and really helped keep me hooked on the pro wrestling side of things. And then sort of to bring it full circle and until the shutdown, take pro wrestling back to SF State was pretty cool.
So I guess making that jump to championship wrestling, the program itself, Levi, I met you, I think, in San Francisco in like a food truck, like a circle of food trucks we were doing a wrestling show at. I'm not sure what the exact what that location is called, but that was, I think, go ahead.
I would say it's the Soma Street Fair they have. It's in the Soma district. It's like a little brigade of trucks that all have come together to have a permanent stay, and they put shows on here and there.
Yeah. So I'd say the first time we actually tried to break into the San Francisco area market, we had done this live event to try to get some local interest, and that's where I met several people, including yourself and Buddy Royal. Had you been in contact with Championship Wrestling before that, or was that sort of your first foray into David Marquez's territory?
Well, actually, you know, it's quite funny. When I started to break in, we used to go travel to Long Beach to wrestle for a company, Battleground Pro Wrestling. And that had a bunch of the SoCal guys. All the guys that were on Hollywood at the time also wrestled there. That's where I met, you know, Ray Rosas, B-Boy, Mikey O'Shea at the time was on the program. You know, it had like all those guys. They were also wrestling Battleground. So we would also watch the show after the wrestling, because it was at a VFW hall, and then Hollywood would come on the TV and we'd all be hanging out at the bar and watching the shows and stuff like that. So that was my first real introduction. And me and Buddy always wanted to wrestle on Championship Wrestling for Hollywood. It was a pretty big goal of ours, you know. And I don't know if that was before or after the WrestleMania weekend in the Bay Area, but that's when we had a tag match with the Rock Nest Monsters, and that's when me and Yuma started talking a lot more about trying to get us down there. So I think it might have coincided with the same time that you guys were trying to get with that spot on Kofi. And that might have been our first chance to really get in to the fold at Championship Wrestling from Hollywood.
Yeah. So I feel like that would have been right after the WrestleMania in Santa Ana, you said. So,
okay. Yeah.
Or sorry,
Santa Clara.
That's
Santa
it.
Clara.
Sorry. Thank you,
San
Santa Clara.
Jose.
It's like Santa Ana is much closer to me. I'm like, that's not right. I drove much farther than
San Francisco. You know?
San Francisco.
Yeah, they claim the Bay Area.
Look, it's a big bay. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so you get involved in Championship Wrestling. You're on the show for a little bit. You get involved with The Office, Nico Marquez, Peter Avalon, and then things kind of ended for a while. I'd say were you back on the program before Championship Wrestling presented by West Coast Pro Wrestling started, or is that kind of what brought you back to the program?
No, I think we were in talks to come back for a little while. Buddy Royal got offered a spot doing the New Japan Dojo. So we ultimately decided to go our separate ways for a second to give him an opportunity on that. And within that was written off of Championship Wrestling from Hollywood because I wanted to stick together as a team. And that was a big thing that I've always stuck by as the Classic Connection was, you know, in WWF or WCW, you know, big name companies in the early 90s, I'd say specifically, you'd see a singles match with a tag team guy or something like that. And that's okay, right? But anywhere like on the independent, it's so hard to keep yourselves under that nature, you know, and to do an independent or a solo match in one promotion where you're not an established tag team or you're not well known like that, I always felt took away from the tag team. So moving forward, I just said it would be best if we decided to separate respectively. And then if everything goes well, hopefully I may never see him again, or you never know, maybe we can come back to it. You know, things happened in the dirty way, and now he's my most hated enemy of all time. And
some of the most classic rivalries it's been back and forth tag team partners and then hated enemies. So
that's right. No,
one way or another, there's that chemistry there. So
yeah. In addition to that, I think it all lined up really well, to be honest, because we came back to the program and we shot a few months, and then right as me and Buddy's feud was really starting to take off was when Championship Wrestling from San Francisco, presented by West Coast, debuted. So it's pretty cool because, you know, me and Buddy have a long history, especially in Northern California. And so the fans that get to view that on Channel 7, you know, is an even bigger thing. To be on ABC like that is just mind-blowing to me, to be honest, still to this day. And the fact that they can watch that feud unfold, you know, as a part of the world, because even in association with All Pro Wrestling or West Coast Pro Wrestling, I've always kept the family of it pretty knit, you know, and wherever I've chosen to go with me and my character, it's always kind of been one world. You know, I haven't tried to do too many different worlds, as I say, because that's how you take just the what's the right word? You know, it takes the lack out of it, or it takes the mustard for one, you know, because you're seeing so many different things. If you're a good guy here, a bad guy here, or you're tag teaming here, you're feuding here, that happened, man. And there's so many promotions in Northern California almost, right? You'll have people feuding in one promotion, and literally 10 miles down the road, it would be a whole different thing. You know what I'm saying? And that's just what it is.
Really
yeah,
continuity.
Exactly.
I wouldn't say really hard. I think I'm over exaggerating. I think it's I think now is not now, but right before COVID hit was probably the best time where people were actually talking to each other and making sure everything was going smooth, and it's good. It's actually working out really well for everybody involved.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. Hopefully that'll breed more healthy competition and guys working together and doing, you know, coming together for the greater, greater goods with that. So speaking of before COVID, I don't know if it was the very beginning of this year or late last year, Scott, Levi gives you a call and says, hey, we're starting a championship wrestling show, or how did you guys actually get involved in the show? What was that, that moment or that phone call?
It was actually really good timing because we were really looking to see how we could. At that time, the conversation already started where we were trying to figure out TV and things like that, and I personally felt that we were too fresh. Like, not really anyone knows who we are at that time, and we didn't have a lot of establishment as far as wrestling went, other than IWTV. And I said, hey, like I put the feelers out there, and me and Levi spoke at great lengths about how to market this and how to kind of look outside of the box of just a traditional pro wrestling organization, especially for independents, which I hate using that term. And then Levi told me about this, and I, not a lot of pro wrestling companies or organizations will openly support other ones, and that's usually just kind of the way of things. And again, I was trying to think outside of the box of doing something a little bit different. And a lot of the people that we feature on West Coast Pro Wrestling shows do work for Championship Wrestling. And I thought that would be a fantastic opportunity for us to come together. Us sponsor them, try to get the name out about our school and things like that. And then also get TV presence in the Bay Area. So people that are seen on West Coast Pro Wrestling can also be seen on Channel 7. And it's just a healthy way of, cross promotion. And I thought it was a really good opportunity. And worked with Dave and Levi, helped put that together, and the rest has been really cool.
What's interesting is that when Dave contacted me, he said, try to get some sponsors or something like that. And at first I was kind of thinking outside of the normal box. I was thinking, well, maybe Scott might be interested. There was another promotion I reached out to, but then I also looked to different businesses that I've associated with throughout the years, and a lot of times they're weary, right? Because I go, well, hey, I've got this pro wrestling show. It's going to be on Channel 7. Now that perks their ears up.
Yeah.
I go, oh, it might be at 2 a.m. It might be 2:30. And they're, well, I don't want it. I can't give you X amount, every week or whatever. And so it was kind of going more into it, exactly what Scott said, to build, the relationship of Championship Wrestling. And you never know where it could go. We could get the ratings views to where we have a power hour, or we have 2-hour time slot where Championship Wrestling presented by West Coast Pro Wrestling leads right into West Coast Pro Wrestling Power Hour or something, and that's really what most people should be thinking of, is that how can we get everything to make the greater good of the product and the business of it, and not just single companies. As cool as that would be to have 10 major companies, even 2 or 3 right now is really a lot, and especially with how much they're all trying to produce weekly content.
Well, I'm glad that you're already thinking that far ahead, even before anything got going, because that really is the goal with everything, and especially with United Wrestling Network. The point of that is to collect all these different companies and kind of have them work together the way that, say, the NWA was back in the day. And so in doing that and being able to have, okay, let's have this Championship Wrestling Hour followed by this local Championship Wrestling Hour. You've already seen some of the stars before, and you're seeing some new ones. And okay, where can I go? I want to see this live. There's so many opportunities based on the seemingly simple act of working together. There is an old expression. It's like a group of promoters can't order a cup of coffee together. And I'm always trying to figure out ways to make that not so, but little by little, it might be, in smaller groups and then expanding out from there. But I'm glad that you already have that kind of mental thought to go looking ahead to what more opportunities this could bring going forward with United and with television in general, with ABC, etc.
100%.
I think I would like to point out about how this program came together was that I've been working with David Marquez for many years now, or 5 or 6 years, and I've never seen a show go from an idea to being on the air so quickly. And even with a couple of weeks or months, whatever it was, that is like lightning speed quick compared to trying to get wrestling on the air. Because whichever way you slice it, there's still people who have, who don't want to put wrestling on TV. And so, or even just sponsor wrestling, like you had mentioned, or whether it's at 2 a.m. or at 4 in the afternoon. And so, when I heard that this program was going to start up 3 or 4 weeks from now, when I first heard that, I was like, that doesn't sound like achievable or real. And then right after that, David was traveling up to the area to get into the studio with the two of you. So, which is, I love that, because we have different kind of looks for each of our programs, and being in the actual studio gave it a completely different feel than, say, being at the Ocean View Pavilion live, or being in Arizona at the Nile Theater, or any of our other venues. So for Jimbo as a broadcaster, then Levi as a new personality to the broadcast booth in one way or the other, how is it actually shooting in the studio as opposed to at a wrestling building?
Well, so you talk about in terms of the quick turnaround, and it certainly was. Like, even my involvement on it was a very quick turnaround. It's funny how life works, and I am a firm believer that things work out more or less how they're supposed to eventually. And I had actually seen Scott the night before at the wrestling school, and I was heading back to my place, and it was on my heart. I was like, man, I just want to do more in wrestling. I'm doing commentary for APW, which is awesome. It's great, but I want to do more. Like, how can I find these other avenues? And I got a Facebook message from Levi, and he said, hey, I have this opportunity with Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. They need a broadcaster to host with me. Would you be interested? And it was like a bolt of lightning. I was like, this is it. I was like, yes, absolutely. And he's like, okay, here's David's info. Email him a little bit about yourself. And David said, sounds great. And then the press release was coming out even before, I wasn't even sure that I was really on it until I was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm it. And then, so it started, where are we going to shoot? And I sort of immediately was hit with the idea that, San Francisco State, they want to keep it local and have it look local. Having been a graduate there, I reached out to one of my old professors, and she was on board immediately. We had to jump through some, bureaucratic hoops, as one has to do. And I even told her, I was like, this is when we need to start shooting. And she's like, oh, that's soon. So, but we got it turned around. And, that's one of maybe the biggest bummers about this shutdown, is that we were getting to work with these students that were getting, real TV broadcast experience, getting on ABC7, this marquee station. So that's been was a really, really awesome aspect of this whole project coming together. But being in the studio as opposed to a live wrestling venue, it's very different, but it sort of has, and I know Levi and I have talked about this, sort of what we try and channel. We love the old primetime wrestling feel, and being in studio, we have a lot of ideas and sort of a lot of toys that we can pull out down the road to sort of bring that vibe out,
Yeah, it's insane, honestly, because I've always enjoyed episodic professional wrestling. That's always been the big kicker for me, especially primetime superstars, all-American wrestling, since the real studio shows where you can tell it's in a studio. So when Bimbo said he was able to, I was ecstatic, man. And to say the difference between wrestling shows, and this or that, I've even seen how WWE operates with some of their stuff. And, I've seen little local independent promotions churn quality footage out of a basement, and it looks like it is in a studio. But it was so cool for me as a wrestler to get this state-of-the-art studio. I've got lights. I have a teleprompter. I don't have to remember anything. And, it's cool because, obviously with wrestling, you want to go a little bit more off the hip or something. But it's awesome to have – I'm literally looking right in the camera, but I have words that I can jump to if I need to at the same time. You don't always get that in wrestling.
No.
And it's so fun. And we can, and we're talking, we want to play these Gorilla Monsoon, Bobby the Brain, tit for tats, we have 3 cameras that we can work with. And then we have the directors, and all the editors are in the real life studio. And it's amazing. It's awesome. And what the best part is that the studio is big enough for a ring. So I would love to see if we eventually get down to that point, because that
into it
would be amazing. That's all I've
Super
ever
into it.
wanted.
It's so funny that Levi brings that up because Levi mentioned that immediately upon walking into studio, and then David walked into studio and he's like, "Oh, we could definitely get a ring and some seats in here." It's like the same sort of mind in there, which was pretty funny.
I'm into it. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna go over to our comments real quick. Thunder Rosa actually says we need Levi in NWA. You know,
Perfect.
Hey, I'm not complaining with it.
Literally built for it.
You know,
God,
I've studied enough.
I got to say about Levi was talking about his feud with Buddy Royal, and that for me, even still the fan of me, I love the storytelling that they've done with it. It is just that classic, tag team breaking up story, and it's come off so masterfully. It's just been a joy to sort of see that unfold, and having it unfold right next to me in studio at times with Championship Wrestling presented by West Coast Pro it's been super fun. And I really have loved that aspect of having a performer as the co-host too. It's been a cool dynamic.
Yeah, and that's a thing that you don't always, at least these days, get to incorporate into the show is that, you get promos in the ring, you get them backstage, but being able to go back and forth, from a different perspective now as a broadcaster, because Levi would have to maintain a different level of professionalism in the studio than he would, say, in the ring. It's like if Howdy Price isn't there to back him up with any kind of wild talking, but when you're in the studio, a little bit different. Remember you're still presenting to the viewing audience there, so it gives an opportunity to go a couple different ways with the performance to develop that character and that story. So.
Yeah, it's a real learning experience, to be honest, because it's exactly what you're saying is where if I'm in the ring or if I'm in the studio while we're filming for the shows, the wrestling portions and stuff like that, I can get aggressive. I can really drive in my passion with even facial expressions or something. But if I'm in the studio cutting the pre-tapes and stuff like that, I'm wearing a suit. You know what I mean? I've got my glasses. I've got my nice wear on. I don't want to get all spitty on, I don't want to spit up everything on my nice lapel pins. And, it's a whole different vibe. It is. It's a whole new way to do it. And that's another thing where I think, sometimes people and wrestlers specifically, when they get in, they only think about the lowest common denominators. They think about the in-ring or their character and stuff, but it really is so much more because you want to be able to give the commentator something to say, and you want to give them ability to feed off of. And then you want to be able to have the commentary and the match, and you want to have the people that are doing the wraparounds. You want to have them have something to feed off of with it all. It really is a lot more rather than just, laser focusing in and I'm getting 15-minute spots and 7-minute matches,
It's great hearing the Timeless One talk about other performers too, and sort of just his mentality, just really sort of expanding his horizons and how he feels about the roster as a whole and everything, and just keeping that continuity and that consistency with the things that he says. It's cool to watch.
Well, it's I like when you guys can go back and forth, especially my favorite thing between the two of you is right after the main event ends, because you immediately get a little bit of post show, even if it is just a minute and a half. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe Ray cheated to win the cup. It's like, well, there's no rule against that, winning by disqualification, but there's so many things that you can go one way or the other, and take in whichever direction that you want. But that's if you want to talk about cliffhangers or things to bring us into the next week. After we've just seen a big main event, we get a little bit of a glimpse of how the different people are feeling about it, and it's not the same answer. So
yeah,
that's the thing that as a viewer I like seeing and with seeing hosts, and it keeps more intrigued in the product.
Totally.
Banter is good, but banter with chemistry is better. So
absolutely,
that works.
So Scott, a question for you. So since this program has started, has there been a little bit of I guess a little different kind of interest in West Coast Pro Wrestling from the TV show?
Absolutely. From the show itself, and on top of that is for the school, because we did at the time. We were running commercials for the school. But what was really nice was that we were starting to see more people from Southern California and also people from the Bay Area that we didn't even touch as far as the demographics went. So it was really good for us on our end. We did see a spike within the first week and a half of it airing. So it was good.
Good. I was glad to hear that. So
I got to put over Scott a little bit here though, because I think it was the last, might have been the last West Coast Pro show before the shutdown, and a buddy of mine, after the show was done, he just looked and he's like, "That's one of the best wrestling shows, period, I've ever been to." And so West Coast Pro really does. We are blessed in the Bay Area to have a lot of great wrestling product, but West Coast Pro Wrestling and to be associated with the United Wrestling Network is very very awesome, and it fits like Levi's claw, hand, and glove. I think it really does.
I appreciate the compliment. We do the best that we can, and from people from all over, especially the West Coast Bay Area. So, to hear that is great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and to add on it, and Scott already knows I've said this, but the difference that West Coast Pro brings to the Bay Area, like with a match card, you're not going to see the same matches you'd see in West Coast than any of the other promotions. It's not niche, right? But it's a very tight idea, and a vision that we're trying to provide. And it's something I've been screaming at the top of my lungs for a long time, and I'm glad to see Scott have somewhat of the same vision to provide and give different styles and different territories meshing, essentially. You know what I mean? You get guys from all over the world at a certain point and coming into our territory to see what our talent is, because California has always been kind of a left off coast, and it's not that it's forgotten or even, a gold or a graveyard as it's been referred to, because it's not. We have quality talent, and there's been quality talent that has gone many places, you know what I mean? Across the business. And but one thing that definitely hinders is that not a lot of people get stuff out for the public to view, and so with West Coast hooking up with Championship Wrestling, it's just another way to get the product and get eyes on it, which is the number one thing that everybody should be doing, especially in this day and age.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, it's a cool thing. We talked about it a little bit, is the idea of, I do think that there is this fan mentality. It's like when they see a wrestler on TV, then they want to go see them live, and in a lot of respects. So the idea that you work with a lot of, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood talent, they're going to see them on ABC7, which again is just so cool to see them on that station. And then, so they're going to get to know them. It's like, where can I see them? Oh, they're at West Coast Pro Wrestling. Like, I want to go see, my favorite wrestlers that I watch every week now live. It's just, it is. I mean, that's just kind of how it works. I know, it worked like that with a lot of people, say Lucha Underground, maybe performers that they weren't familiar with before. And it's like, oh, but now they're coming up to the Bay Area. I have to go see them now. And so it is this cool dynamic. So when things do get back up and running again, I just really foresee that relationship working out very, very well.
There's going to be a lot of interesting stuff as soon as we get out. Like, as soon as this world opens, like, we could only do so much, like, I'm tired of calling Levi and be like, hey, bro, I got this. Let's go do. Are you ready for this? Because there's 1,001 things that could be done with pro wrestling. And I think a lot of people are stuck in certain ways, and you can't be mad at them. It's a very fickle industry. It's very volatile to some people, because one bad show could throw you off and completely ruin whatever image that you have. And what ends up happening is that you start competing with yourself more than anybody else. You have to hold a certain standard. I honestly believe that the Bay Area has, I've only heard the term once, that California, or specifically the Bay Area, is a graveyard. And as soon as I heard that, I was immediately upset about it, because the last 10-15 years in the Bay Area, we have some of the most talented people that's, not even just come through here, but like, it's just in general, we have some very talented people here that have some great experience. My initial goal was to get people from outside of the Bay Area, or even California for that matter, because there's so much going on in the wrestling world that I would love to see that here, with people that are, I wanted to say veterans, with the experience, talent we have in the Bay Area, and just putting those two together was a no-brainer. And looking forward to working with Championship Hollywood on another level other than just sponsorship is something that I do look forward to, because it just feels right. It's not it doesn't feel forced. It's a good opportunity for everybody involved. So anything that gives people an opportunity to see the talent from the Bay Area, I'm definitely going to always look towards that direction.
Worries. Going back to something that Jimbo said a few minutes ago, the idea of seeing a wrestler on TV and then being able to go see them live is an experience that you don't really get to do that often. I remember when I was a kid, it's like if I saw someone on TV, I'd have to wait 6 months or something before they came to town. But if I'm watching, Watts or Levi or whoever, Heather Monroe, on the weekly program, and then I see that they're also wrestling in a couple days, I can go see them, and that's something that I think Bay Area fans will jump right at, and because they see them here, and then they see them on the bigger stage of television, and then going and being able to see them face to face. That's makes the whole connection that builds a stronger audience. And I think from a fan perspective is like more complete than you could have with, I'd say, many other wrestling companies.
It's very rare that you find people that don't. A lot of people have the idea that if it's on TV and then it's no longer on TV, it's not as good. But the best part about, I would say, West Coast Pro is it is an intimate setting, meaning it doesn't have a crazy budget. Don't need that. You want to come see your people. You want to see your favorite wrestlers. You want to get their autographs. They're right there. You can high five them. However, you want to interact with them as long as it's safe. But I think that has been missing for so long because of how the structure or the machine of professional wrestling works. Because, like you said, we'd see somebody on TV, we'd have to wait 3 or 4 tours. 6 months later, I forgot the reason why I wanted to see that person. Rather than, I could watch this person on Championship Wrestling. Here's a commercial for West Coast Pro this Friday. I need to go. So it's a good flow of content. It's a good flow of getting people involved and excited to see people that they're actively watching and paying attention to. And then also, the good part about it is you can follow these wrestlers on their social media, and you can see what they're up to, and you might become a fan of somebody you've never heard of, that and maybe at one point they could end up on Championship Wrestling. They could end up on a West Coast Pro Show. You never know. Wrestling is always up in the air of what's next. So I think it's a really good flow of things.
And to add on that, I feel like we're at probably one of the most pivotal points in professional wrestling history right now, not only with COVID, but just the differences of opinions that are flowing, and the differences that it might, that just might change the stature of the business, right? And you have WWE that's been the forerunner for so long, and AEW is a very strong contender with a lot of different ideals that WWE doesn't have, and that could be a big game changer in wrestling moving forward. I was thinking about this the other day, that it might be the time that WWE may not be the top dog anymore. And, it's just interesting to think about those concepts, because for the past 20, 30 years, there was only one distinct big dog. There was almost WCW, but they were always the pinnacle. And right now you have such strong independent promotions. I know Scott doesn't like the word, but you have such strong companies that are coming up, and such strong competitors that really might just be the difference that professional wrestling needs to get it back into the mainstream, or get back into filling places. You know what I mean? And it's a small niche idea, but if it's presented in the right light, with the right people, with the right backing, anything is possible.
It's easily, I could say, I could definitely agree with you on that. Pre-COVID, and even things that are unfolding during COVID, I could say that wrestling is beautiful. It's an ever-changing, always it's fluid. It always changes no matter what's happening to it, and everything adapts no matter what. You have people that are trying to run shows like drive-ins. You have people doing empty arena matches. You have like WWE doing the more pre-recorded like movie style format, things like that. It's actually really great to see what we're going to see on the way out. I know some people might be worried or iffy about the future of professional wrestling, because it's a very fan driven industry, and especially these live shows. People definitely miss live shows. People miss hearing the crowd. I mean, we could hear it chimed in all we want, but we miss the live audience. And I am extremely excited to see what wrestling turns into as a whole, because when we come out of COVID, whenever that is, because of how ever changing it is. It's the different flavors of ice cream. If you don't like this, there's 10 other things that you can like here. And I'll use the word independence. Before, independence really stayed on one wavelength, one wavelength. And now you have different, I wouldn't say tiers, but different organizations and independents that are doing the best to separate themselves from each other and create such an amazing thing. So just adding on to what Levi says, it's going to be awesome when we get out of this. Like, it's just when you know what I mean. So
I think that's a very interesting idea, as you said. That like now is that time that we'll kind of find out what's going to happen going forward, and that there is such opportunity for all different kinds of things. And I was talking with a couple of our other talents the other day on another stream about how necessity is the mother of invention. And I feel like right now there's a lot of necessity because we're in a position where our hands are tied. And I know there are kinds of people who see that as a step back, and then there's people who are going to get inventive, people who are going to see what can we do differently that we didn't think of before. And that's a mindset that I've always subscribed to. That not having the full big budget, what can we do, and how can we pull this and this and make it look like that? Which brings me to the idea of Levi mentioned that it comes, things come down to the talent. That things are there. There is a lot of opportunity for them to do different things. I think now more than ever, the wrestlers aren't just wrestlers anymore, or you can't really just be a wrestler. You have to have some other kind of skill set, whether that's backstage, whether that's editing, whether that's whatever. That's a really, as a professional, if you're a professional wrestler, to be professional across the board. So this is my question for Levi. Who did the voiceover for those commercials for West Coast Pro Wrestling?
I did, actually.
What was your experience of that?
Hey, bro, come through. I need you to do these voiceovers. All right, I'll be there 30 minutes. All right, cool. Sorry, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, basically, and you're right. You have to be all encompassing as a talent nowadays, and that was something that I realized. I broke my arm in 2013 during a match, actually, and for the next 4, 5, 6 months, I hopped on commentary on any show that I could around the territory, specifically at APW. And I would hear, guys say, hey, man, you're pretty good at that or something. And it was just because I studied the primetime wrestlings. I love Bobby the Brain Heenan and all that, And so going forward, I've been, me and Scott religiously calling each other left and right saying, oh, we should try this, or we should try that, or how can we do this? So he says, hey, we need to do the voiceover for these. I said, I'd love to. I want to get it. I feel like I have a nice radio voice.
You do.
And, and that was something just to help and just to do it. Because what's it going to take to give 30 minutes to read, a couple lines off of paper into a microphone? Even during this COVID setup, I set up a little studio myself. I got a webcam. I got a microphone. I'm learning how to do some editing and some stream stuff. I'm thinking of kind of starting some streaming where I watch wrestling and kind of give my critiques on it or something for anybody that might want to see something like that, So you really do. You really have to give more than just lacing up the boots backstage and helping get the ring down or something. You know what I mean? You got to give. What are you going to do? Do you know how to edit? Can you hold a camera if the camera person doesn't show up? There was one time, Scott can test. We had a little trainee that didn't know how to hold the camera and it's shaking left and right. And I'm backstage after my match and I have my hoodie and zipped all, and I'm like, dude, I'm about to go out there right now. I'm about to hold the camera. I'm just going to stick, and people would just watch me wrestle, but we're live on IWTV and we're on a stream on the internet with, possible hundreds or thousands possible of people watching. And we can't afford to have a shaky screen because yes, the 100 people that are there, they don't mind, right? But the people that are watching and the thing that's going to be stuck in history, the timeless footage, may not be good, and that can affect us down the line. So I feel
how badly do you want what you're a part of to be successful? How much are you willing to? Like, I get very frustrated in the sports world sometimes, where the idea is like, well, that's not my job. It's like, well, right now it could be, and it would be a great help to the overall product. And that's sort of like the not my job mindset is one that I never try and fall into. It's like, how can I help? How can I make it better so that everybody, like the whole rising tide lifts all boats kind of deal.
Completely honest when I could say, and I mean, I'm going to say two things because I'm going to go back to the question at hand about people being, basically people wearing more than one hat. But at my shows, I can honestly say that the people that are from around here are extremely helpful. It is a very DIY thing, do it yourself, but everyone's kind of like on the same team. You know what I mean? Like people work together up here so ridiculously well that it is shocking when I hear about horror stories from places outside of here. But to say that, yeah, Levi did want to run out, and I'm like, you know what I mean? But to go back to what the original topic was that you're seeing a lot of wrestlers adapt to different skill sets, and you see a lot of them stream on Twitch, or they're making vignettes on YouTube. They're being creative on Twitter and social media, Instagram, 4-minute promos. Just right now, you could see that there are people that the level of creativity that people have that aren't on the highest stage, and you could get such an amazing amount of entertainment from these folks that it's like wrestling is so much, and the saying is wrestling is everything. When you see people get to work and how they put it together and how their mind moves, you're like, okay, they got the fundamentals, and this is definitely entertaining. And when you can see that translate from the ring to outside of it and adapting to what's going on in the world right now, and people doing fundraisers, the list is a mile long, but it's a beautiful thing to see that right now. And a lot of folks are learning new talents and learning that they are capable of doing more than just jumping in the ring, having a match or two, because it's kind of like people getting their feet put to the fire. They don't got a choice at the moment.
Oh, you better believe I'm going to try to hop behind that board once we get back to the Ocean View Pavilion. I want to try some camera shot edits myself.
I'd say you absolutely have the opportunity to do that. I think I talk to people about all the time is how, if you want to try something in Hollywood or do something, you can do it. We'll teach you how to do it. All of our camera operators, for the most part, have been from the ground up. Someone you've fallen on a couple of times, Levi, our cameraman Shane, trying to get the shot. I promise.
Oh yeah, and I love Shane. He works hard. Yes,
and was it Shane? He's someone who wanted to be a camera operator, and Dave stuck a camera in his hand, and told him over the course of a certain amount of time, got him into what is good for broadcast. And so not only that, I mean, you guys have seen me, or at least Levi's seen me backstage at Championship Wrestling or in Arizona. I'm running around doing everything that I can. I think even though I've always wanted to do a lot of backstage stuff, like what Jimbo was saying, like it became a not my job situation for so many people. And it's like, well, we need someone to run this promo. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. All right, what do we need? Cool, let's do it this way. So for anyone watching, whether they're a talent or just someone who's trying to get involved in wrestling but maybe not as an in-ring competitor, if you want to come to any of the Championship Wrestling programs, Hollywood, Arizona, hopefully soon San Francisco, there is opportunity here, and it's the whole operation is much like how Scott was saying about how that West Coast has a collective of people who will work together, and it works so much greater for the entire show. That is the thing that I am super happy to hear, because that's the thing we always want to do with the United Wrestling Network. So
it was funny coming down to Championship Wrestling at the Ocean View Pavilion, and being there mostly as an observer, but of course stuff happens. Threw a headset on, it was in the back, and David's just like, use him, he can help you. And it was, I was happy to do it, and it was fun, and I was happy to learn and help out where I can. So it is it's a highly fluid situation. So always be ready. That's something that Levi, actually, Road Trip Levi is where I first started here. Like, always travel with your gear, and like, so I came prepared as well as a broadcaster.
Yeah. Did you produce commentary that day? What headset did you end up putting on?
I was helping with the commentators. Yeah.
Right. I appreciate that. I'd say that show in particular would have been an interesting one for you to kind of have your first experience of Hollywood. Because we had just switched over to a new booker, and like 2/3 of our production staff was flying in from a boxing event in Texas the night before. So that show was really thrown together in a really not it was it was planned out, but on the day when we were all trying to get everything going as much as possible, Peter Avalon, who was a producer with us, actually wearing a shirt right now.
Nice.
He was running around helping, trying to figure out. There was a Falls Count Anywhere match that day that will air again this weekend or next weekend. And there's so many moving parts to the transition of what we had been doing to what we are about continue to be doing. And so for you to come in on a day when we didn't have a full production meeting, when we had to get promos going, we had all this extra stuff we had to shoot. You got to see a bit of a craziness of that, but you kind of see how everyone can wear all these different hats in that
Absolutely.
capacity. So I'd say as we're looking to wind down a little bit here, what and we're getting nearer once COVID is over, once we're back in the full swing of things, that we're inching closer and closer to having a local program in San Francisco in the Bay Area. What are some things that each of you would like to include in that program once it gets going? What do you whether it's what your stamp on the show will be or what you'd just like to see for that? Do you have anyone?
I mean, I would love if Championship Wrestling, when it does come up to San Francisco, like I would love to do play-by-play commentary for it. That's obviously something that, doing that with APW and beyond. And now with Championship Wrestling doing the studio wraps, that would be something I would love to do. And when, I know Timeless One has a lot of tread left on the tire, but when he is done, I could think of nobody better to be sort of, my Jesse Ventura or Bobby the Brain Heenan again in that capacity as well. So that is definitely sort of the spin that when I hear that being the commentary role or even like the Mean Gene type role is something that I get very excited to think about.
What do you think of that, Levi?
I think it sounds great. I can't wait to hopefully have a major hand in that. I want to be one of the talents from the area that really leaves it better than when it was when I got here. I really want to make a mark in that, and that show has the possibility to really let my creative juices flow beyond the ring, and I think that's one thing that I've always appreciated about Championship Wrestling from Hollywood and the United Wrestling Network is I have never been shunned away from any idea or anything I've wanted to try. And they have given me lots of opportunities. And when Dave called me and said, "Hey, I want you to be involved with Championship Wrestling Bay Area, I think you'd be a good fit. You know what you're talking about." That hit home because that's exactly what I want to do. And what I really want to bring to the show is mystery. I want people to watch, but never know where it's going to go. That was what always excited me the most about Memphis wrestling was that. Lance Russell would say, "Good morning, welcome to Memphis Wrestling." And by the end, he's so distraught. And he's like, "Well, I don't know what happened. They just went off the rails. I guess I'll see you next week." It's like, we need that back in wrestling because too many people, it's just gruff. It's bell rings, people wrestle, bells rings again. No, we need to have some flow, man. We need to have some fun again. And that's what I want to bring back to the program.
I really want to see that show now, man. It's like bringing a mystery, bringing anything, even like we were saying before about having like the comments from the broadcasters, what's going on here. I think that I've been trying to bring back into Hollywood, at least in some capacity, is I feel like wrestling isn't wild anymore the way that it used to be. Exactly. And we got a tiny taste of it in this Falls Count Anywhere match that people will see again. Where Halston Body gets thrown into a dumpster and they're breaking bottles of each other and all this crazy stuff is happening in a situation where you might not see that or might not expect it. So flipping those expectations from what you think might be a studio wrestling show, okay, this is going to be it, and to now being like, I had no idea that they were going to go this way. What could they possibly do next? Only for you to go out there next week, Levi, and present something completely different or something that furthers it in a way that no one could have possibly thought of. Like who wouldn't be interested and intrigued to sit down and watch that? So
that feeling of unpredictability is sorely lacking in a lot of places, and that's when the ratings were at their highest. It was, I don't know what's going to happen.
Right. Anything could happen. So Scott, a lot of big ideas flying around here. You have obviously very close to your heart with all of that's going on. What do you want to do for television once we come back?
Well, Levi really knocked it out of the park with the mystery. That's just Fantastic. For me, it is representation for the talent that we have out here, so the world can see them. Get them out, get them out of the Bay Area, get them to be traveled, go down to LA, go all over the place, and just be well known. I want people to fall in love with this again. That's it. I want to be able to talk to someone 10, 15, 20 years from now that were a kid when we had a show and say, hey, I remember this moment. And they tell me exactly what they were doing that day, how they felt when they were watching it, everything like that. The same way that I look at wrestling when I watched it when I was younger. You know what I mean? I think
Absolutely
that we're going to create memories. And that's really the perfect way to explain that. We all try to chase the dragon, every single one of us. If we've ever been a fan, we've been hooked. And ever since that moment, we've always tried to find the feeling to replicate the feeling that we had when we first fell in love with wrestling. And it kept going, it kept going, it kept going. I want to be able to bring that back. I'm not saying it's completely gone because there's a ton of amazing, talented people with a lot of great independents out there. And I think that we're definitely going to be doing that in the Bay Area. I have a complete vision for what I want to see for it, and I honestly believe that we have the talent out here that could definitely pull that off in a way that doesn't disrespect the intelligence of the people that are watching our product.
Very cool. All right, well, I can't wait to see all that once it starts to get going. Scott, where can we find you online? Where are you on social media?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Base the Rock. Also, if you want to follow West Coast Pro, it's WC Pro Official on Twitter. We're also on Instagram as well, and we're pretty active. So if you have questions concerning anything with our talent or people that you want to get in contact with and things of that nature, just let us know, and we'll get back to you as soon as we possibly can.
Yeah. Levi Shapiro, where can we find you online?
Ditto. You can catch me at Levi Shapiro across all social media platforms. I'm mostly active on Instagram, a little bit on Twitter, trying my best. Say hello and, come out to a show once we get back and see the mystery.
Very cool. And Mr. Kincaid, same question.
I wish I had the same social handle on all on all platforms, but I don't. So good on you, Levi. But it's at the Bimbo Jimbo on Twitter. I'm like Levi, trying harder to be better at that. But my more natural habitat is bimbo.jimbo on Instagram. Give me a follow, say hello, talk wrestling. I love interacting with people. There's just something that when you get into a real conversation about pro wrestling, that brings out that kid in you, like Scott was talking about, and chasing that dragon and just that feeling. So I love interacting with people and just chat. The passion of pro wrestling is what makes it go round, in my opinion.
Very cool. All right, well, I am at Nicholas Bonanno. Everyone make sure to follow United Wrestling Network all over social media. So it's at United Wrestling on Twitter, United Wrestling Network on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And for anyone who hasn't seen it, watch Championship Wrestling presented by West Coast Pro Wrestling. If you're in Northern California, it's every Saturday night, 1:30 a.m. On ABC 7. If you can't catch it there, you live outside the area. It airs on Fight on Tuesdays, I believe. And after that, it is available on the United Wrestling Network YouTube with a little bit of a delay there. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you for the three of you for joining me this evening. And a shout out to everybody who networks with